families tackle major issues. I'm your host, Regina DeMeo, and with me today is Brenda Miller, who founded DC Campaign to Prevent Teen Pregnancy. Thanks so much for being here, Brenda.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm delighted to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this is a really important topic, I think, and my first question is, how long ago did you found this organization?
Well, DC Campaign was founded in 1999.
Wow.
We had a distinguished board of directors, and we came about because a group of local philanthropists wanted to focus a nonprofit organization entirely on preventing teen pregnancy in the District of Columbia. It was right after Bill Clinton changed welfare as we know it, and there was a mayor's committee on reducing teenage pregnancies and out-of-wedlock births that had been meeting for a couple of years, and one of their recommendations was that this should be a privately funded organization. So the philanthropists and the community leaders came together, and out of it, DC Campaign was created.
And my understanding is, after its creation, you have cut the rate of pregnancy in half?
Well, our original mission was to cut the teen pregnancy rate in half by 2005. We met that goal and exceeded it by 57.7%.
Wow.
So then my board said, well, let's cut it in half again. So our new mission is to cut it in half again by 2015.
Wow. Okay. And I mean, what is the average number of births?
Well, the teen pregnancy rate right now, according to the most recent data available from the D.C. Department of Health, is 54.4 pregnancies per 1,000 girls 15 to 19. That's how the data is collected all over the country, and that's the demographic that we look at.
Okay. And is it across the board, or are there certain wards that are more at risk than others?
Well, the pregnancy rate is a citywide rate, but we also have information from the Department of Health on births by ward, and that's where it gets really troubling. Yeah. Across the city, we've seen births drop to teens, except in two wards, in Wards 7 and 8, which are the two poorest wards in the city. They account for more than half of all the teen births.
Oh, wow. So when you do your programs, who are you targeting, the teenage girls or the families?
Well, one of the things that we decided to do when we started DC Campaign was base all of our work in research. And research shows that teens are less likely to have or cause a pregnancy when they have a close, caring relationship with a trustworthy adult. Okay. Ideally, that's a parent. And so what we've done is focused a lot of our energy on training parents and other adults so they can talk to their children about love, sex, relationships, values, and so that they can stress that having a pregnancy during your teen years will get in the way of whatever dreams you might have for the future.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I have to say that the way I grew up was like, you just don't do it, right? And we didn't talk about it at home, which is so stupid. But luckily, in school, we had sex education classes, and, you know, my friends, we were very open about, you know, birth control and all sorts of things. So, you know, I realized as a parent that I did not want to repeat the same cycle that I had in my own childhood. So at a very early age, I think my son, he was 9 last year, and I bought this book, Where Did I Come From? And I sat him down, and I made him read this with me, and he kind of really didn't want to read this book with me, and at the end, he thought it was so disgusting. And I said, look, you know, you may think that now, but later on in life, you may change your view about sex. And whatever questions you have, we can always find answers. There's books, there's all sorts of resources, and I just want you to know you can always come and talk to me about it. So that this way, like, it's not this taboo subject and he has to go get information from, you know, kids his age who probably don't know anything. Does that make sense?
You're absolutely right, and it's an ongoing conversation. It's not like you can just have that conversation once and then everything is answered.
Right.
As long as you keep the lines of communication open and he knows he can ask you anything, and that together you will find the information, you'll be happy, I think, with the results. The problem with a lot of parents is that they don't want to talk about, you know, love, sex, relationships,
well, that's
and
what I
values
ask you. So
with their children.
You think that's still common today, that there's families like mine?
Well, you know, a lot of parents are afraid that if they start the conversation, that they'll encourage the teens to have sex as if they need any encouragement. And a lot of people don't know how to start. And it's as easy as, keep sitting there watching television and something will happen on a show that will be a way to start a conversation about, what do you think about the way they treat each other? That's a way to talk about sex, because healthy relationships have to be part of the conversation. And it goes on and on and on. I always tell people expecting one conversation to do it is like taking kids to a nice restaurant once and then expecting them to always have good table manners. You have to reinforce it. You've got to keep the conversation open, keep talking about it. And I think that's something a lot of parents are afraid to do.
So how do you break through that barrier with parents?
Well, we have this really great thing called Talk as a 4-letter word. It's an interactive training for parents where we dispel the myths they might have. We get them comfortable with referring to body parts with the correct name. We talk to them about how to communicate with their children. We show them birth control methods. We have them role play so that they play, one of them will pretend to be the teen, another will pretend to be the adult, and they role play a conversation. We give them homework. Okay. We say that, after the first session, go home and listen to your child. Because a lot of parents just want to talk, and they don't listen. So we say, can you listen to your child for 5 minutes and come back and report as your homework on what you heard. Part of the homework for the next week is talk to your child about your child's dreams, and you share what your dreams are for your child. And they go, oh, I don't want to do that. That's too hard. But when they do it, they realize that the child really wants to hear from them, and that they really have so much influence on that child's life and that child's opinions about relationships, that it really is a good way to start a conversation and keep it going.
You list as one of the factors the importance of having a plan, right? What do you see as the importance of having a plan, a life plan?
Well, the research shows that there are several factors that help protect teens from pregnancy. The close caring relationship with a trustworthy adult is one of them. School success from an early age, safe places to spend time with your friends doing interesting things, with adult supervision. Although people don't want to hear it, teens need supervision every bit as much as toddlers do.
Oh, yeah.
And the issue of a plan is really important, because teens who don't have a plan that excludes pregnancy are just as likely to get pregnant as those who might be actively seeking it. So the plan is that, what is it you want for your life? And here are the steps to get there. And having a baby would interrupt those steps, or causing a pregnancy would interrupt those steps. So you really want parents to be very explicit with their children about, if these are your goals, here's what you have to do to achieve them. And you don't want to have a baby or cause a pregnancy until you're much older, because that will prevent you from achieving your dreams.
No, absolutely. I mean, I thought it was funny. I can't believe I'm admitting this on air, but I was a teenager. I was in boarding school, and I came home for Thanksgiving, and we're going around the table of what the things we're thankful for. And my mom says something like, "Well, I'm thankful that Regina got this scholarship, and now she's in boarding school where she doesn't have to worry about drugs, sex, and alcohol." And it was so hard not to say anything, and all I could think is she insane? Because all the more opportunities are available when you don't have that parental supervision. Like, when you're a teenager, you are dealing with drugs, sex, and alcohol all the time. It's there, it's available, and you have to have a plan, in my opinion. Like, my out was that I was a gymnast. I was a national gymnast, and so I was very active. I was traveling all over. I had a plan to go to college. So getting pregnant was not at all in line with that plan. And it's just amazing to me that parents wouldn't sit and have a conversation with their kids and say, let me just explain to you how hard it is to be a parent. Because as much as I love being a parent, it's kicked my butt.
It's the hardest job you'll ever do.
Yeah.
And it's important for parents to be clear about that, because you're right, all teens are facing temptations all the time. The modern world is just full of all sorts of situations that they may not know how to handle. But if they've got a clear line of communication with their parents, they know where they can go for advice, and they know where they can go for support, and they know where they can go if somebody's pressuring them or trying to make them do something that they don't want to do. But you mentioned being a gymnast. Girls being involved in sports is a huge protective factor.
Is it?
It is. It works that way for girls. They have fewer sexual partners. They start having sex later. They're less likely to get pregnant or get a sexually transmitted infection. It doesn't work the same way for boys, unfortunately, but it is a great protective strategy for girls.
So what kinds of programs do you have in the communities other than, I mean, you have a fundraiser you do every year, right?
Yes, and I thank you for coming this year.
That was great.
We do an annual celebrity auction. It's our major fundraiser of the year. It's usually in the fall, and we auction experiences that money can't buy.
Okay. But like other fundraising programs, do you have to submit for grants, or I mean, how are you mainly funding all of these programs you have?
We're funded primarily through foundation grants and individual donors. Okay. And individual donors can go to our website, dccampaign.org, push that Donate Now button, and help us out for the end of the year.
That's fantastic. So, can you tell me some of the success stories you've had? Because I remember seeing a slideshow at the fundraiser, and there were some girls. I mean, it just you could see their faces and the pride. They were getting some awards in school, and they were really thankful for the opportunities that your program is providing for them.
Well, for many years we've run youth leadership task forces that are character development and leadership training programs. We run them for boys and girls, and in those programs they learn how to be their own advocates, and they develop advocacy skills. So some of those videos that you saw, the girls actually made themselves.
Okay.
Because we wanted them to learn how to do short commercials or public service announcements, and how to use video that they could then put on YouTube and Facebook.
Okay.
And they said that many of them said that they made friends in the Youth Leadership Task Force that have continued even after they've graduated from high school.
Now, do you have programs that deal with the girls that actually do have a live birth and become moms as teenagers?
Well, we work in collaboration with many organizations around the city, and there are several really good programs for teen mothers. One of them is the Healthy Generations program at Children's Hospital, and another one is the TAP program, the Teen Alliance for Prepared Parenting, try to say that fast, at Washington Hospital Center. And both of those work with teen parents, mothers and fathers.
What kinds of things do they do with the teenagers?
They help them get back in school. They work on conflict resolution. Often teen couples that have a birth don't stay together, but they're still a family.
Right.
And learning how to communicate and how to collaborate is important for them. They provide...
So they're like co-parenting classes?
Well, mostly, I don't know about co-parenting, but conflict resolution, so that they can share custody, so that they can both be good parents to their child.
Okay.
They do educational support programs. They do health services. Both of them have a particular focus, but the thing is that they want those teen parents to be healthy and safe and able to interact in a way that will be good for the child.
Well, the stats are pretty astounding about the risk of these children falling into poverty and being abused or neglected. I mean, there's a lot of things that you have to worry about if there's a teen pregnancy.
Well, at one point, the district's child welfare agency had data that showed that 75% of the children who were in foster care had been born to parents who started their families as teens.
Wow.
So the fallout from teen pregnancy isn't just a one-time, one or two person problem. It really ripples through the whole community, and it costs the District of Columbia close to $1 billion a year to support families that were started when the parents were teens. So it's a big deal,
amazing.
and we want people to pay attention to it because it's a totally preventable problem.
Right.
Every child deserves adult parents, and every teen deserves a childhood too. So, you're working with a situation that doesn't have to be that way.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to take a short break.
Okay.
And then we will be right back.
Danse, balance la cadence, on ouvre bien tes hanches au bal du dimanche. Danse, que la fête commence, dans ma belle robe blanche, je suis ton chou.
You didn't give up on sex. Don't give up on birth control either. There are more methods than you think. Find yours at bedsider.org.
Welcome back to Making It Last, where we share ideas to help families tackle major issues. I'm your host, Regina DeMeo, and with me today is Brenda Miller from DC Campaign to Prevent Teen Pregnancy. Thanks so much for being here, Brenda.
Thank you.
So you have a map that actually highlights sort of the teen births in the district, right?
Yes, we have a map that shows births by ward in the District of Columbia, and there's an overlay for this map that shows juvenile arrests, because what we've discovered is that the same neighborhoods that have a high number of teen births have a high number of juvenile arrests. And we think it's connected to the fact that, for example, a girl who's born to a teen mother is at especially high risk for becoming a teen mother herself. A boy who's born to a teen mother is much more likely to wind up in trouble with the law than a boy who's born to an adult parent. And so we also know that the siblings of teen parents, a teen mother, are more likely to become teen parents themselves. So it's a self-perpetuating cycle, and the only way to interrupt that is to intervene so that the parents are able to help steer their children in a different direction that's a lot healthier for them, both boys and girls.
The parents that participate in your program, is mostly moms, or are there also men that participate?
Well, you know, we like for the organization that's hosting the training to recruit parents or recruit other adults. And so sometimes we'll have fathers, we'll have uncles, we'll have grandparents. We may have guardians. But typically the groups are fairly heavily female. And it's an interesting training experience.
It's 2 to 3 sessions normally?
Yes, we like to do 3 sessions, but sometimes people can only commit to 2. And so we try to pack a lot into those 2 sessions. We start with an icebreaker called the anatomy game. And what happens with that is everyone takes a piece of paper out of a little cup, and then they have to explain that word. They have to say the word, use the word. And for some people, this may be the first time that they have called body parts by their correct names. So there's a lot of stammering and giggling, even though these are adults.
That's funny.
And some people don't know all the meanings of the words, and so they learn from each other. But once they get past the anatomy game, they feel a lot more comfortable, because everybody's been a little bit embarrassed in the process. And then we go on through some other exercises and make sure that when they leave, they've got homework, as I said earlier. And when they come back for the second session, they report on the homework. And then we do another series of exercises. One of them is called I Believe, and it gives them a sheet. They don't have to share it, but they have to read a number of things and figure out where they stand on those issues. For example, one of the things in I Believe is that is about whether teens should have sex or not. Now, people I know come out on all sides of that issue, but you'd be surprised at how furrowed the foreheads are and how concerned people are as they go through the list of things, as they check off what they really believe. And it may be the first time that they've actually examined some of those beliefs, and that again opens people up so that they're able to absorb more information and feel as if they really have ownership of what they're learning.
That makes a lot of sense. And do you guys cover STDs and the importance of discussing that?
We do, because when we talk about birth control methods, we always stress that birth control methods are just to prevent pregnancy. They don't prevent disease, and so we talk about condoms. In fact, we do an exercise with that, because everyone has to take a condom out and open it and look at it. And I do an exercise where I roll it down over my fist and my arm, because whenever you talk to teens about condoms, invariably boys will say, "Oh, well, they don't feel good. They're not big enough. They're too small." And so when you get parents in a situation where they can actually see that they stretch a lot, then that gives them something when they have a conversation with their sons that, "No, really, you're kidding me. Everybody can wear one. They fit, and you need it to protect yourself."
Right.
So we do a lot of things in the training as a way for people to have some experiential learning, but also as a way to break down those barriers and make them feel comfortable having what for some people could be a difficult conversation.
I imagine some people are learning. I mean, HPV is relatively a new thing, and I'm amazed sometimes when I'm having a discussion, and really in the last couple of years I've had some guys go, what's HPV? I'm like, really? Have you not been listening to the news? It's not just a female issue, it's just that they can't test guys, but they can test women. But 50% of all sexually active people will get HPV, and that's a huge problem. And there's no cure. There's same thing with herpes. Once you get it, there's no vaccine that's going to get rid of it. You have it. And I mean, these adults need to be able to know that information and that can convey that to the kids.
And they do need to know that, and they also need to know that scare tactics typically aren't as effective as really having a frank conversation. Now, the fact is that there is no cure for, as you say, and some parents would like to show pictures, of the horrible lesions and the terrible sores and say, this is why you should never have sex. Well, most of the data shows that doesn't really work with kids. They'll see the pictures and go, ooh, that's gross, ooh, that's awful. But that isn't going to be the reason that they decide not to have sex. So we want parents to understand that while scare tactics might make you feel good, they might not necessarily protect your child as effectively as giving them good, solid information and keeping those lines of communication open. We've developed a new program that we're going to launch in 2014 called Parents as Partners in Prevention. I don't know why we have so many P's in these things. But in that, we're going to work very closely with parent groups in Wards 7 and 8 so that we can do trainings for parents about goof-proof birth control. That's long-acting methods like Implanon and IUDs, so that they understand how these methods can protect their children and how they can be made available to them through their current health insurer. Because we want to make sure that people don't steer away or shy away from contraception because they don't know the facts about it or because they've got bad information about it. And we think that a lot of parents who might be fairly young themselves would find this information useful in their own lives.
Well, this was a question I was going to ask you, whether you think it's an issue of lack of information, or is it maybe an issue of lack of availability? People don't have health care and they don't have access to, getting birth control. Do you think it's an issue of lack of access or information?
Well, I think it's an issue of not feeling really comfortable talking about birth control and not feeling really comfortable seeking it out. A lot of people, like you said, when you got your information from your friends in college, a lot of people get their information from their friends, and their friends may be misinformed. And this is true for teens and adults. So if somebody says to you, oh, I don't use birth control because it never works, and that's your friend and you believe them, then you'll say, oh, well, I don't. And in fact, that's not true. There are highly effective methods of contraception. You just have to use them, and you have to use them consistently, and you have to use them every single time.
Right.
But you've got to dispel all those myths so that when people have an opportunity to talk about what they think is true and then discover what actually is true, they've got a much better chance about using access and finding those services than if they just say, oh, well, I'm not going to even think about that. Things happen. Whatever happens, happens. That fatalism can be met with an optimistic sharing of information.
So, what kind of feedback do you get from the parents after they've done the training?
Well, when we first started doing these trainings, there were some parents who liked so much being in the experience that they wanted to be trainers themselves. And so they would go out in their neighborhood and do, trainings with church groups or housing groups. And we had hoped that this program would be a turnkey where we would train enough parents so that they could then carry it on.
Right.
But, programs have to have funding, and people could only be volunteers for so long. And so we've brought it pretty much back in-house. But we're always happy to have adult volunteers who'd either like to recruit or be part of the training or in some way help us keep reaching new groups of parents.
So what is involved to become a volunteer? Like if I wanted to volunteer, is it a one-day training?
Well, it depends. If you want to be you want to be a volunteer with the parent training,
right,
it would be a longer process because we want to make sure if you're involved with the training that you are as well informed as possible. But if you wanted to be a parent volunteer, for example, who said, my church group wants to do this training, then we'd work with you and give you material so you could recruit people, and we'd set up the training, and then we'd come to your church and do the training with those parents. So there are all sorts of ways you can get involved.
Okay. So it's kind of interesting that you mentioned church groups, because I would think, and I'm glad that it's not the case, but I would think that churches are just don't do it. So you're saying that they're actually receptive to your organization coming in.
We found that to be the case. In fact, we once had a program called Have Faith in Youth, where churches opened their doors one night a week to 10 kids from the neighborhood and provided a meal, a mentor, and some sort of educational support. It could be playing Scrabble. It could be monitoring homework. It was just that we wanted them to be in a safe place with adults, again, that close caring relationship with a trustworthy adult, where they could just talk. And that we didn't expect the churches to do sex education. All we wanted them to do was be welcoming and affirming, so that young people had more adults in their lives who were committed to their success and who would help them with, getting information and making good decisions.
In your observation, these teens that do get pregnant, do they get the support they need from their families, or are they basically shut out of the family situation and left to fend for themselves once this happens?
Well, that depends. For a lot of teens, having a baby might be a way that they declare their independence. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if they realize that it's going to be really difficult, that money's going to be tight, that they're not going to be able to do the things they could do before they had a baby. They're not going to fit in their old clothes. They're not going to be able to go out with their friends because the baby's always going to be there.
Right.
But in most situations, I think that parents make accommodations. Although there are an awful lot of people in homeless shelters who started their families as teens and just never kind of got back on their feet.
And there's a lot of runaways. My understanding is that teens that get pregnant, they tend to run away from home.
Well, it might be that they've run away and then they get pregnant rather than the other way around.
Okay. All right.
I mean, we used to think that people got pregnant and dropped out of school.
Right.
What it looks
that was my
like
next question.
is that girls drop out of school and get pregnant because they don't have the structure, they don't have the connection to something that they care about. They don't have anyone to provide guidance and direction. And so getting them back to school is a double hurdle, because not only did they drop out of school, they dropped out of school and had a baby, so they've got to do grade recovery, and they've got to have somebody who's going to help them, work through all those issues.
Right. And I mean, the idea of trying to manage your own school while also dealing with a child that's going to need so much from you.
And who's going to need child care, for one thing. You can't take a baby with you into the classroom.
Right.
So what happens then? So there are lots of issues that, when parents are honest with their children about how difficult it is, sometimes kids will go, oh, I didn't know all that. Because it's not as easy as it looks. Having a cute little baby all dressed up is one thing, but 2 o'clock in the morning, a screaming baby is a whole other story.
Yeah, I mean, and the economic realities of diapers and formula and baby food. I mean, those first 5 years are incredibly expensive until they're ready for school, and then things sort of calm down a little bit. But yeah, if you don't have the resources, it's going to be a really rough road.
And if you're trying to be in school yourself, and you've got to provide for someone else, and you've got to have it's just insurmountable. And I don't think that teens want to be bad parents.
No.
I just don't think they have the resources to be really good parents, because they still need parenting themselves.
Right. I mean, like you said earlier, they still have a right to a childhood.
Exactly.
And, once you have a kid, your childhood days are over.
Yes, certainly your childhood days are over when you become a parent.
Well, if someone wanted to learn more about your organization or give a donation, what's the best way to do that?
Well, our website, dccampaign.org, is a good place to start. Or they can email me, bmiller@dccampaign.org, and I'll be happy to talk to them and see how we can, work together.
That would be great. Well, thanks so much for being here today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It was fun.
Great. Well, if you have any show ideas or would like to be a guest on my show, please feel free to email me at genxsmarty@gmail.com. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next week on Making It Last.